a man has just died, and the men gathered around the news called themselves his friends. But do you know what their very first thought was? It was not grief. It was not loss. Leo Tolstoy writes that the first thought that occurred to each of the assembled gentlemen on hearing the news of his death was how this death might affect his own prospects and those of their acquaintances for transfer or promotion. One is already working out which job he might inherit. Another is wondering how to get his brother-in-law transferred. And underneath it all, Leo Tolstoy says, was one quiet feeling, a feeling of joy that it was he who was dead and not I. You see, he's dead and I'm not. Each of them thought or felt in this way. The man in the coffin was named Ivan Ilyich. The great Russian writer Leo Tolstoy gave him to us in 1886. And almost 140 years later, his life has never looked more like ours. Because Ivan Ilyich did everything right. Everything he was told to want, he got. And only at the very end did he ask the one question most of us spend our whole lives avoiding. Is there any meaning in my life that the inevitable death awaiting me does not destroy? Today in this video, let's follow him to that question and ask it of ourselves while we still can. But before we follow Ivan Ilyich, let's talk about the man who wrote him. Leo Tolstoy was not a poor man writing about emptiness. He was one of the wealthiest landowners in Russia, the author of War and Peace and Anna Karenina, two of the greatest novels ever put to paper. By every measure the world uses, Tolstoy had won. And then, at the height of all of it, something happened to him. In his own words, my life came to a standstill. So when Tolstoy sat down to write about a dying man who suddenly doubts his entire life, he was not imagining it. He had lived it himself. Hold on to that. We will come back to it. Tolstoy says, the past history of Ivan Ilyич's life was most simple and ordinary and most terrible. Think about that. Not terrible because it was tragic, terrible because it was ordinary. A good career, the right friends, and the right marriage, chosen, like everything else, to look correct. Ivan Ilyich married out of both considerations. He did something pleasant for himself in acquiring such a wife, and at the same time, he did what highly placed people considered right. And so his life went on, in his own words, exactly as he believed life ought to go, pleasantly and decently. Remember those two words. Tolstoy is about to turn them into a verdict. Then came the perfect apartment. Ivan Ilyich threw himself into it. The wallpaper, the furniture, the curtains, chasing a picture in his head of how impressive it would all look to his guests. And one afternoon, while fixing those very curtains, this happened. Climbing a stepladder to show a dull-witted upholsterer how to hang the draperies, he slipped and fell, though he was strong and agile enough to hold on, and all he did was bump his side on a window frame knob. That evening, laughing about it over tea, he said, "It's a good job I'm athletic. Any other man would have killed himself, but all I did was bruise myself a bit here. It hurts when you touch it, but it's getting better. It is only a bruise." However, that bruise is what kills him. The man hanging curtains to impress his visitors has just begun, quietly, to die, for the sake of a room. And here Leo Tolstoy says something that lands even harder in our age of endless consumerism. He describes the furniture as the things bought by all people who are not actually rich, but who want to look rich, though all they manage to do is look like each other. Philosophy of status says, we fill our homes to resemble the rich and only end up resembling one another. As the illness grows, the doctors treat Ivan Ilyich the way he once treated the people in his courtroom, a case to be processed, not a man to be met. And for Ivan Ilyich, only one question matters. Was his condition dangerous or not? But no one would answer it. However, underneath the fear of the body lies a far older denial. Ivan Ilyich had learned a small piece of logic in school. Caius is a man. Men are mortal. Therefore, Caius is mortal. Caius, just a name in a textbook, a stand-in for any man. And that, Tolstoy says, was the whole trouble. Because he was not Caius, and not man in general, he had always been quite separate from all other beings. He was Vanya, with Mama, with Papa. Was it for Caius, he wonders? The smell of the little striped leather ball that the boy Vanya had loved so much? This is the oldest trick the mind plays on every one of us. Other people die. Caius dies. Not me. It is the very thing his colleagues felt standing over his coffin. He's dead, and I'm not. And now, alone in the dark, Ivan Ilyich looks back at the careful life he built and says, I've lost my life here on this curtain, my battleground. Now let's stop the story for a moment, because everything Ivan Ilyich is feeling, the man who wrote him felt first. This is the standstill we left back at the beginning. Leo Tolstoy says in his autobiographical essay, Confession, while describing his own life in the years when he had absolutely everything. All around me, I had what is considered complete good fortune. I was not yet 50. I had a good wife who loved me and whom I loved, good children, and a large estate, which without much effort on my part improved and increased. I was respected by my relations and acquaintances more than at any previous time. I was praised by others. My name was famous, and in this situation, I came to this, that I could not live. A good wife, children, a growing estate, fame, and he could not live. The same Tolstoy, who once wrote a story asking how much land a man really needs, now asked the very same question of his own life. Tolstoy writes in Confession, the question would suddenly occur, well, you will have 6,000 desiatinas of land in Samara government and 300 horses, and what then? He says about his work, you will be more famous than Gogol, Pushkin, Shakespeare, or Molière. And what of it? And I could find no reply at all. What then? And what of it? Two of the most important questions a person can ask in his lifetime. And most of us arrange our whole lives so that we never sit in the silence long enough to hear them. And for all of it, Tolstoy retold a famous ancient Eastern parable, the dragon in the well. Long ago, a traveler, overtaken on a plain by an enraged beast, escaping from the beast, he gets into a dry well, but sees at the bottom of the well a dragon that has opened its jaws to swallow him. Somehow, he seizes a twig growing in a crack in the well and clings to it. Then he sees that two mice, a black one and a white one, go regularly round and round the stem of the twig and gnaw at it, but while still hanging, he looks around, sees some drops of honey on the leaves of the twig, reaches them with his tongue and licks them. In this story, the dragon is death, The two mice, the black one and the white one, are night and day, quietly gnawing through the branch that every one of us is hanging from. And the honey is the more. In Tolstoy's other story, Pacom reached for the next plot of land. Ivan Ilyich reached for the next achievement. And we reach for the next well. That is the question, isn't it? This story is usually read as a warning about ambition. Don't want too much. But Tolstoy is doing something deeper. It is not ambition he is afraid of. It is the lie that climbing is the same as living. Lying there, Ivan Ilyich finally sees it. It's as if I had been going downhill when I thought I was going uphill. In society's opinion, I was heading uphill, but in equal measure life was slipping away from me. In our modern world, we are all Ivan Ilyich. We don't hang curtains to impress the neighbors anymore. We climb a different ladder. The next salary grade, the next title, the next house, the next version of ourselves that will finally be enough. Tolstoy's real question was never how Ivan died. It is, when will you stop? And the honest answer most of us give, very quietly, is not yet, not quite yet. And then comes the thought, Ivan Ilyich had spent his whole life refusing. And what if my whole life, my conscious life, has indeed been not right? He tries one last time to defend it, the career, the house, the proper marriage. And he cannot. In Tolstoy's words, there was nothing to defend. And yet, in the whole story, there is one person who is not afraid. Not the doctors, not his wife, a young peasant servant named Gerasim, the only one who will sit through the night and hold the dying man's legs, and the only one who tells him the truth. When Ivan Ilyich apologizes for the trouble, Gerasim simply says, "We've all got to die one day. Why shouldn't I give you a hand?" There it is. Gerasim accepts death, and because he accepts it, he can be kind, present, and honest. Everyone else denies it, and because they deny it, they lie. Tolstoy says that lie was Ivan Ilyich's worst torment, the lie that reduced the solemn act of his death to the same level as their social calls, their draperies, the sturgeon for dinner. If you remember our last story, Gerasim is the Bashkir of this one. The simple people were not possessing their life. They were living in it. For 3 days, Ivan Ilyich screams. And then, 1 hour before the end, his young son creeps into the room, finds his father's hand, presses it to his lips, and weeps, and something breaks open. Tolstoy tells us exactly what had been holding him in his agony. It was not death. What kept him from getting into it was the claim that his had been a good life. This justification of his life clutched at him, would not let him move forward, and tormented him most of all. Do you see it? The thing trapping him was his own insistence that his life had been good. And the moment he lets that go, the moment he stops defending it, he is free. He feels sorry for his son. He feels sorry for his wife. He wants only to stop hurting them. How good and how simple, he thinks. And then, instead of death, there was light. Someone in the room says, "It's finished." They mean his life. But Ivan Ilyich, somewhere past words now, understands it differently. Death is finished, he says to himself. It is no more. He found it. 1 hour before the end, he found the thing his whole proper life had kept hidden from him. Here is what stays with me about this story. Ivan Ilyich did not need a different life to be saved. He did not need more time, or more money, or one more rung on the ladder. He needed only to see the life he already had, before it was too late. The light was there the whole time. He simply spent his years looking past it, toward the next thing. Tolstoy did not bury him as a punishment. He held him up as a mirror. So, before you scroll on to the next thing, sit with one question for a moment. Ivan Ilyich climbed his entire life and only saw the truth in his final hour. You and I don't have to wait that long. What is your curtain? What proper life are you quietly defending right now? And would it still feel right to you on your last day? That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more empowering content. Thanks for watching.